All right, that's how you open a show, live, live in color, right here from the Open Mic Studios. Welcome aboard, everybody, to the YouTube channel that is the Sports Talk Nation. Today we're going to take a bit of a detour here on the Sports Talk Nation as we continue our training camp tour, but we're going to talk about one of the worst teams, or at least one of the worst projected teams in the NFL this year, and that, of course, is a team that plays in one of the biggest media markets in the world, a team that has all kinds of drama surrounding it, as it does seemingly every single year, and that is, sadly sometimes, regrettably others, the New York Jets. The Jets, who tore apart their team from last year in the offseason, shred all kinds of payroll, have about $80-something million in payroll flexibility going forward into 2018. They are a team that is clearly trying to be on the rebuild. They are a team that a lot of people say, quote-unquote, are tanking this year, where they want to actually believe that. I know the players and coaches don't want to believe that. But this is a team that's trying to make a transition into what they hope would be a brighter future. Kind of tough when you're in the AFC East, when you have one team that dominates all the time, namely the New England Patriots, of course. But that's what the Jets are trying to do. And usually this is an organization that does things, at least in my mind anyway, I'll be very blunt and honest with you, ass backwards. And the guest we're going to have on today, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about their approach for this year and for going forward, and whether they're doing it the right way, whether they should have done this to begin with a long time ago. We'll talk about that right now with Dan Feuerstein, who talks about the Jets with Rick Laughlin on fanfavorite.com. I hope I got that right. Fanfavorite.com, Mr. Feuerstein.
You did.
I did.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cohen. It's always great to be back with you. And, the Jets podcast on fansfavorite.com, fansfavorite.com. Michael, let me just be blunt about this. Hallelujah! Hallelujah!
About what?
The New York Jets.
Yes.
Doing what they should have done probably a long, long time ago. You always hear in a media market, in a rabid sports market like New York City, the tri-state area of New York City, northern New Jersey, southern Connecticut, that you cannot rebuild and expect teams or the fans of those teams to be patient. Look what the New York Yankees have done. They've rebuilt their teams, and what happened in the Derek Jeter era? They won 5 World Series. You look at the New York Rangers, and they have a solid core of players that have come through their minor leagues in the American Hockey League, like the Hartford Wolfpack, and, of course, the Greenville Swamp Rabbits of the East Coast Hockey League, the ECHL. Even in soccer, the New York Red Bulls have developed some top-notch young players. One is definitely the future of the U.S. men's national team. One is the future of the Haitian men's national team. And now you have the New York Jets.
You have the New York Jets.
You have the New York Jets who have decided to make the attempt themselves. And you know what? I welcome it. It. I'm happy for it. I am going to watch all 16 regular season games.
You're crazy.
On the television.
I'm kidding.
And if they go 0-16, it is fine. If they go 1-15, it is fine. 2-14, 3-13, Mr. Cohen.
So if I count,
there will be no grumbling.
If I count the preseason and they go 1-19, you're okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
What if I count? What if I? Okay. What if they go 1-19 and still?
Nope.
I can't go back from that one. I guess I can't walk that one back.
Can't.
No. Plus the Browns are 2-0 in preseason, so they're already better than the Jets. What?
That's fine. Look, that's fine. Because let me say this right now. Look, the Browns have been a perennial loser team as well.
Right.
And if this is the season that they are starting to, make a comeback and become an important team in the NFL these days, if this is the start they're having, that could lead to a better season for them. Good for them. I don't care.
Right.
Good for the Browns. I don't care.
But here's my point, and I appreciate your optimism, but the point is this. You bring up all the teams that have been trying to rebuild in recent years. You bring up the Yankees with their farm system that they brought up, but even when the Yankees brought up all those young kids, they're still a pretty good baseball team. This is a really bad football team right now. They really don't have, outside of a Leonard Williams and maybe Jamal Adams, who they drafted their number one pick this year. Outside of those two guys, there really is no core on this team, especially offensively. They don't have a quarterback. They certainly don't have a ground game. I know I like Bilal Powell. You do as well, but I don't look at him as a feature back. They have no wide receiver help at all. Certainly no one that has stood out, and they got a couple of guys who are going to be suspended to start the year to begin with. Offensive line might be the worst offensive line in football. So they got a lot of work to do, not just throughout the course of this year to find out who's going to be a part of this moving forward. But one thing I want to let's touch on a couple things here first before we get into the position battles of the quarterback and everything like that. My biggest thing is this, and you and I have gone back and forth in this in private conversations. I don't know if Woody Johnson is going to be truly committed to this, meaning that I remember back in April he says, well, we hope to see some improvement. I don't know what that means. It was very, very, very vague. I don't know if he means we go 3-13, but if the team plays hard at all 16 games, that's enough. I don't know if that means we have to go 6-10 and everyone's safe. I don't know what it means, because you got a head coach that is in a tough spot. He is in his third year in a situation where the team is breaking it down and rebuilding, something that probably should happen the first year. And you got a general manager who's had to walk back all the big moves that he made his first year to try to make this team competitive right away and try to rebuild. My thing is, looking at the history of Woody Johnson, and this was even brought up in the Rich Cimini article, looking at Woody Johnson's history, you really don't know what he's going to do from 1 minute to the next. He might just turn around and say, you know what, we went 1-15, that's not good enough, everyone's fired. I just don't know. I don't trust Woody Johnson, or even his brother, Chris Johnson, for that matter, in this kind of situation.
I understand where you're coming from, Michael. And look, let me just say this right now. Look, I understand where you're coming from. Woody Johnson, of course, is probably the biggest wild card on the Jets, because he is the owner of the team. And yes, he will be flying to the United Kingdom to be the ambassador for Donald Trump's president. But wait. I didn't interrupt you. Let me just go this. Let me just go here, please. I understand his brother is taking over, and I understand that it's going to be kept within the family, the Jets and everything. And I understand where you're coming from. But I would like to believe that if Woody Johnson wants to get to the level where the Patriots are and wants to try and get to a level about, how they win all the time, obviously by fair means and not cheating, the truth of the matter is that Woody Johnson, and I understand, he could just tear this thing up and contact his brother and say, that's it, 1 year and I'm done. We're going to go a different direction. I can understand he can do that and all that other stuff. But the point is that, if you are going to deviate from the plan, I think Woody Johnson is and will be, if he is not one of the worst owners of the National Football League, he will become the worst owner of the National Football League. You signed off on this. 1 year is not enough to say I'm pulling the plug. It has to be 2-3 year plan. It has to be. And then if you feel it's not enough, if you feel you're not going the right way, then you pull the plug, you pull it out, and then you go in a different direction, and then you try to bring in as many free agents as possible. And at the same time, we all know that McCown is not the quarterback of the future. Right. I already knew this. You already knew this. He's not the quarterback of the future. He accepts his role as a bridge quarterback. He knows he's not going to probably be in the NFL for very long. But sadly, right now, he has enough NFL experience than both Hackenberg and Bryce Petty. Right. And the thing is this, Michael, is that Bryce Petty has a little more NFL expperience than Hackenberg, which is true. That is true.
Before we get to the quarterback situation, you brought up a good point there. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I had to have the British anthem playing. Dun, 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 dun. It would say "Bon voyage" to Woody Johnson as he goes on his plane as London is calling. And maybe it's part of Donald Trump's plan to make the Jets great again. I don't know. Maybe get Woody Johnson out of get him out of town, We're going to make the. I can't do a Donald Trump impression, but make the Jets great again. That's his plan.
It's probably true. But let me just say this. Look, I didn't like the way that, the Jets jettisoned both Eric Decker and David Harris. Obviously, they spoke to the media. Then after both of them spoke to the media, they were both given their releases and, during the OTAs and training camp. And look, I didn't like the way it is. But at the same time, look, it had to happen. Even though you have loved to me, I think Eric Decker would have stayed. It sounded like, or at least it looked like from what I saw, it looked like he was ready, to be a leader for the younger players. And at the same time, it's tough not to see Quincy Enunwa out there because of the bulging disc in his neck. Obviously, he's done for the year, and I think that's a smart move. Obviously, we don't want him to get all of a sudden a major injury that could cost him his NFL career. So we're going to see Robbie Anderson, Jalen. Well, I'm just saying, like, on an offense as a whole, and yeah, we will. I know we will talk about the positions, but offense as a whole, it's not as good as we thought it might be. If we still had Enunwa, there might have been maybe a sense of maybe they'll win a couple of games and surprise a few games for victory here and there. Other than that, right now the offense is not what it is. And to be honest, hopefully Robbie Anderson can step up and maybe become either a 1A, because we know he right now in this type of offense, he's a number 2. That's for sure. And Enunwa right now is a 1, even though he's not going to play.
Well, I don't know what Robbie Anderson's going to be. I don't know what Jillian Marshall's going to be at this point in their careers. I don't know if we're really going to even get a good indication this year. If one or both of them do play well this season, maybe I could see Robbie Anderson being that kind of slot receiver guy for them at some point down the road. Jalen Marshall maybe being the third receiver. In other words, they don't have a number 1 or a number 2. They let those two guys go and Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker. So it's a total rebuild offensively, and that's really where they stand right now. But let me just ask you this: you mentioned before about Woody Johnson that if he decides to change course and decides to tear this team apart, or at the end of the season, I'm assuming that would mean firing Todd Bowles and Mike McCagnon. You would not be in favor of that. Is that the impression I get? Because, again, he would have every right to do that if he should choose at the end of the season.
This is how I feel. Right now, firing Bowles and firing McCagnon right now would not be the smartest move at all. I think they both should stay. I think right now, and I understand where you're coming from in all of this. And look, in a traditional sense, in the National Football League, this is year 3 of their tenure. And if this was a season where we would normally be saying they got to make the playoffs, they got to get that wild card, because we always know the Patriots are going to win the division, just leave the division alone. It's all that belongs to the Patriots. We all know this. They have a shot at wild card. They got to go and compete for one of those 2 wild card spots for them to make the playoffs. We already know since the purge, this is not going to happen. Mm-hmm. After all of the salary purging, and, look, if this is what they're going to do, then I believe that it has to be left alone. They have to be left alone if they are trying to change the culture of this team. Mm-hmm. 2 years ago, they were 1 win away from making the playoffs, and they had a horrible start in Western New York at the Buffalo Bills. They got swept by the Bills, and that eliminated them from the playoffs, because we all knew the Steelers, who lost to the Baltimore Ravens in Week 16, were not going to lose to the Cleveland Browns in Week 17 for that playoff spot. Last year was supposed to be an upgrade. Last year was supposed to be with the, very, very small tinkering moves. The only move they made, obviously, was bringing over Matt Forte from the Chicago Bears. Like I was trying to say, this is not your normal Jets NFL season. To be honest with you.
Yeah.
So, if you are expecting, in a traditional NFL regular season for this Jets team to make the playoffs and they have a horrible record again, and they don't make the playoffs, yes, I would agree with you that they deserve to both be fired.
Mm-hmm.
But because they went in this direction, because they went into a different direction, now you can't really fire them. You've got to allow them to try to make chicken soup out of you know what I mean?
Well,
so I'm not going to – because that's what they got to do. They have to do it. And if they do perform well,
yeah.
and if they lose – forget about how many wins, how many losses. The performance on the field, that is what I'm talking about. It's mostly about performance in the game. If they play well enough on both offense and defense to say, hey, listen, maybe it's not as bad as we all thought it could be, then they have to stay and let them build from the draft and maybe start to get better players through free agency, because they'll still have tons and tons of room under the salary cap.
Yeah,
That's
they will.
all I'm saying.
No, I understand where you're coming from. It's just that I look at their situation, I look at what they've done. I have questions about the drafts that McCagnon's had the last few years. He has not drafted well. He has taken 2 quarterbacks early in the draft twice, back-to-back years. Second round with Hackenberg, third round with Perrey. Neither one is a franchise quarterback. It's been very questionable with him and his moves during his time here as general manager. The decisions to bring back a lot of the guys they cut under Idzik when Idzik was trying to save salary cap. Now they bring them back, and that didn't work out. I mean, just a lot. There were a lot of things that bug me with the moves from McCagnon. And Bowles is Bowles. He's a good coach, but I don't know if he has the personality here for New York City and for New York City and as a head coach. That being said, we'll see what happens this year. If the players do put a better effort on the field. I mean, there were times last year where it looked like they didn't care. Like that game against Indianapolis on a Monday night, it looked like the players didn't care at all. If they show some effort, I could see where you're coming from, where they get another chance. But again, 1-15 is 1-15. But moving on to this position battle with the quarterback situation, I think it's kind of interesting that lately Josh McCown, who you acknowledged, and I agree with you there as well, is not the answer to this team. He's a stopgap quarterback. He's 37, 38 years old. He's only there just for this year to kind of work with the two kid quarterbacks to give them some competition this year. But I'm kind of bewildered by the fact that they're not giving him any reps in camp and didn't give him any reps last week against Detroit. I would imagine he's going to get some reps here against the Giants this week, but really, if he's going to be their week 1 starter, if he gives them the best chance to win a couple of games early in the season, which if you're Todd Bowles, I would imagine you would be interested in doing, I'm surprised he's not getting as many reps as he probably should be right now.
I think here's what Bowles is trying to do here. Now, I could be wrong, and that's fine. I think Bowles knows who his week 1 quarterback is going to be. I mean, if he doesn't pick McCown to start the season, he's a fool. Because McCown has all the experience possible to go out there and to perform well and, of course, help out Hackenberg and Perrey in practice and as well as on the sidelines when the Jets go on defense during games. Look, the truth is that Bowles, who probably gave a lot of reps to McCown for the second preseason game during training camp, but then decided to give one whole half to Hackenberg and the other half to Perrey. We didn't expect that. So maybe he's just, letting them get their reps, and then all of a sudden they are just going to, sit down and maybe McCown gets the full half for this game against the Giants. Because let me just say this, Michael, and I know we're talking about the Jets, and yes, the offensive line for the Jets is not good, but if I could just throw a little dig, or as they say in the business these days, a little shade to the Giants' part.
Go ahead.
I think their offensive line is a lot worse than the Jets right now, especially when you're trying to protect your starting quarterback. And, of course, you've got 2 wide receivers who are right now questionable to continue on before the regular season comes around. And I'm talking about
Are you saying, Mr. Feuerstein, that the Jets-Giants game will be the battle of 2 of the worst offensive lines in football?
You're correct, sir.
Oh, my God! No, that's a headline. No, I agree with you.
That is a headline. But honestly, though, you know, I mean, right now, Hackenberg has shown a lot of indecision, which is tough to see that because, once again, he got nothing last year except for like maybe a few preseason starts. But other than that, that's it. And to see what he really has, I mean, we're probably going to see McCown start the first half of the year, and then they're going to do like what they did, when Eli Manning came into the middle of that year. The Giants were like 6-3, and then all of a sudden they pulled Kurt Warner from, and of course they committed suicide by not keeping their playoff spot by throwing Eli Manning into the middle of the season, and they just technically
I don't know if Christian Hackenberg's Eli Manning. That's the problem.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying he is. All I'm saying is I could see Bowles go first 8 games with McCown and then all of a sudden alternate the second half with both Perrey and Hackenberg per game. That's
I could
all
see
I'm
that.
saying.
I could see that. I could definitely see that. I mean, it's a schedule early in the year that there are a couple of games they could surprise and win. Week 1, Buffalo. I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh, they're going to win the game." Believe me, no. But I'm saying they're going to have a chance there in Buffalo. They're going to have a chance against Miami because Cutler is Jay Cutler, and they'll have a chance. And they'll have a chance against Jacksonville as well. So there are a few games early in the year where they'll have some chances to win a couple of games. Whether they do or not, we'll see. But I agree with you. I think they're going to use McCown at the start of the year. If they're, let's say, 1-6, 2-5. Pull the plug and put in Christian Hackenberg, and then just go from there and see what the kid can do. Honestly, between you, me, and a lamppost, I would not mind just throwing the kid out there and just letting him grow from week 1, or even just start Perrey week 1. Because how else are they going to learn? I know it's this old adage, sometimes it's best to learn by sitting, but I always believe it's best to learn by actually playing. So if you're actually going to if one of these two kids is actually going to turn into something, maybe even prevent the Jets, if they play well, from going out there and taking that number 1 pick and taking a Sam Darnold next year in the draft, or Josh Rosen, then just throw them out there right now. But I guess that's the only reason why they're getting all these reps right now in the preseason, just to give the coaches, to give Todd Bowles an opportunity to really see what they got.
Look, I'm not disagreeing with you about, not play Perrey to start the season or start Hackenberg to
There's
start
no
the
right
season.
answer.
I'm not disagreeing with you about that. I mean, look, we all want to see how they can do in a real life game situation. Technically, this is, but it's really more preseason because you're not playing the full game. I would like to see what these kids can do for a full game. Obviously, Perrey had injury issues and he never completed a full game. He came into the middle of the game. He started the game and then he got injured, so he had to be taken out. I am not against that at all. Believe me, I'm not against it at all. Because, once again, if this is going to be the season where you want to experiment with the quarterbacks that you have to see what they can do, who are truly unproven, and once again, Perrey is unproven, you can't go off and say what you saw last year saying, okay, Perrey doesn't know what he's doing. Perrey has to be kicked out. We can't, what are the Jets doing? Look, the Jets are doing what they're trying to do is to see what they have. And if this is the season where you're going to have to do it, then so be it. This is where they have to do it. And, look, when the Jets went this route, when the whole thing got started, Jet fans were on New York Sports Talk Radio, WFAN, ESPN Radio New York, Michael Kay show, Mike Francesa show, any show you want. Every Jet fan said this. I am happy they went this route. I am happy that the Jets blew up the roster. We're going to go see what we got, and we're going to get ready for, whenever the kids are ready. I'm ready for it. I know many people I've talked to are Jet fans are ready for it. And look, if we're not going to know now, then the Jets will continue to rip off an old Band-Aid and put on a new one. Because, look, we need to see what they can do to fix this situation, and it needs fixing. It
definitely needs fixing. I agree. You're 100% right. You got to stop taking the Band-Aid on, putting it on, putting it off, because that's what they've done throughout their history, especially under Woody Johnson. I mean, you go from, and I'll just use the case in point, you go with the Brett Favre era, or lack thereof, where they decide that they're going to get rid of Chad Pennington, which turned out to be a mistake. And looking back on it, they probably should never have done it. But at the time, it was kind of exciting because you're going to get Brett Favre, and that didn't work out too well. Favre gets injured. Mangini gets fired. Then you hit the reset button. You bring in Rex. Rex brings his attitude. He brings the bravado. And then before we know it, we got Sanchez, Tebow, and butt fumbles, and everything's falling apart. And then they try to. I mean, it's just constantly trying to reset by not resetting. It's like you do a half reset, but you don't really do what you should have done, which is rebuild. And I thought, to be honest with you, this team should have rebuilt after the 2012 season when they had that Tebow Sanchez thing, Rex Ryan, Mike Tannenbaum all falling apart that year. That was the year after 2013. They should have just started to do the full rebuild, and they didn't do it.
And I agree with you. They should have done it then. And unfortunately, they just didn't know what to do. And, you go on a halfway reset, it's not going to be enough. I mean, I know you want to trust a core of players that you believe are going to go and do the job. But, when you got to reset the core, that tells you this is a full rebuild. Like I said, there is no core right now. And you know what? That's fine. You want to say there's a core on defense? There's a core on defense. Front seven is good. Jamal Adams, it looks like he's going to be the future captain of the defense for the Jets. So I liked what he has shown so far. Could it be a bit better? Yes. Is he a rookie? Yes. But you know what? He's out there trying to do the job that he's been asked to do. And you know what? I just believe that right now, secondary looks okay. I'm not saying it looks great. I'm not saying they're fantastic. Secondary at the moment looks okay. Yeah. Because you're seeing what the front seven can do with Muhammad Wilkerson, Leonard Williams. And I will also say this. While I am not happy with the jawing away at Brandon Marshall by Sheldon Richardson, because Marshall's now on the Giants, don't worry about him anymore. Just you worry about what you're doing on the Jets. You don't have to worry about Brandon Marshall anymore. He's not on the Jets anymore, so you don't have to worry about that. So fine. He's down the hallway in the same freaking stadium. Big freaking deal. Grow up. You won. Yeah. He's gone. This is your team now. You act like the leader you thought you should have been.
Well, he has gotten so many different second chances, how Sheldon Richardson. This is a guy who could easily have been traded. The Jets tried to trade him several times during the offseason, but because of his off-field problems, no one wanted anything to do with the guy. So he should be thanking his lucky stars right now that he's still playing in the NFL right now, because you can make the argument that he shouldn't be anywhere near the Jets.
Yeah, absolutely, because he should have been gone. I didn't like I gave him I gave him a second chance after the whole the police car chase with the guns and the kid in the back while there's marijuana in the car and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, it's like we're finding out there was internal strife between him and Brandon Marshall. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm not going to say anything about it, but I'm going to wait. And then he pulls off that crap with the Instagram, Snapchat video about, how he doesn't want to be there anymore. And I'm like, well, if you don't want to be there anymore, ask for a trade.
Get out of here.
Exactly. No, seriously, ask for a trade if you don't want to be there anymore because you're there with Brandon Marshall. All I can say is that if he can really, really behave himself now and not worry about Brandon Marshall down the hallway, then, not trading Sheldon Richardson technically would be a very good move. And I say technically because you're right. This is probably chance number 3 or number 4 that he's getting.
Yeah, it is.
And it's amazing. It's amazing. Strike 3 and you're not out unless he fouled off 2 pitches. But, it's just absolutely unfathomable how he's been given so many extra chances by Bowles and by McCagnon, because if it was me, I would have kicked him out after the whole video being in the locker room saying I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be here tonight.
I mean, he's such an
I would have kicked him out.
He's such an immature player. He really is, and it's just a shame that. To me, it's a shame they couldn't get rid of him. I mean, I know he's a talented player. I know if he plays well this year, it's going to help them, but it would have been better for the locker room if they could get rid of him. It really would be. I mean, if they could still find a way to do it, I know that the teams can still trade players by mid to late October. It doesn't happen often, but if they can find someone to take him, I mean, please take him off the Jets' hands. It'd be fun. I don't want to say funny, but
If you say the Patriots, I will.
No. I say it would be funny if he ended up getting traded to the Giants.
Oh God, no!
Ah,
Oh my God, what's going on?
I know.
Unbelievable. But anyway,
Defensively, though, yes.
defensively though, let me say this defensively. I think right now you have to be impressed with the defense because in 2 games they've only given up 19 points.
11 sacks too.
And a lot of, and so far some good sacks as well. It doesn't matter if it's the first team or the second team, even the third team. They're getting to the quarterback. And I think that at the moment is going to tell you why the Jets are going to be competitive. They'll still be competitive in this season. Now, obviously, offensively, as we've said, and I will disagree with you a little bit about Bilal Powell. I think this is his time to shine. I think, look, if you can prevent the opposition's defense to stacking 8 men in the box, and that offensive line can improve, Bilal Powell will run roughshod all over the opponents, and he'll chalk up at least close to 100 yards a game.
Well, the Jets have 2 pretty good running backs there. They got Matt Forte, who's been in the league a long time now. He's always been a solid back, going back to when he was with the Chicago Bears. Last year, got off to a good start, but the injuries befell him and really cut short his season. I've always liked Powell. I like his explosion. I like when he gets between the tackles. He is a guy who has a lot of speed. Reminds me a little bit of Leon Washington, but maybe a little bit bigger. So I like those 2 guys, but I just would love to see the Jets get a better offensive line together. That's why I've always been harping every year for the last 2 years. Please draft an offensive lineman with your first-round pick. Now, look, I'm not going to complain. You get Jamal Adams, who could turn out to be an All-Pro one day, maybe. But you got to try to address this offensive line. And we'll see if this Wesley Johnson, et cetera, and the rest of this group there can turn into something on the offensive line. Because if they can, that takes so much more pressure off these 2 quarterbacks or 3 quarterbacks, however many quarterbacks they're going to use this year for the New York Jets. But it all starts up front, and I think that's really their biggest weakness offensively this season.
And I agree with you. I right now, look, obviously it wasn't good to give up Nick Mangold. I thought maybe if you left him there for 1 year, for 1 year this year, and then cut him after the end of this year to go for like another center, then I would have understood that. But, they wanted to go after the rebuild right away. They felt that they had to cut ties with him. Brian Winters so far, I think, is the only decent offensive lineman that the Jets have right now. We'll have to see during the season how this offensive line can be. And if they can, survive this year and show some improvement, then, maybe it's just 1 or 2 holes they need to plug, not all 4.
Maybe.
But maybe. I mean, you never know, Michael. Look, we can procrastinate everything about the Jets, what's going on this year. But one procrastinator, which, I'm not happy about, obviously, it's Rich Cimini from the ESPN New York website who covers the Jets. Look, if I'm calling him out, fine. I'm calling him out. I did not like his title for ESPN New York on Twitter saying "Anatomy of a Collapse."
Well, that's
how the Jets landed on the brink of disaster. Now, let me just say this.
Sure.
The brink of disaster. You know what the brink of disaster is? Staying status quo and having another 5-12, 5-11, 3-13, 2-14, 1-15 season with all the veterans that were in the Jets locker room that were yelling at each other, having, a shouting match. Todd Bowles just, maybe not doing his job in corralling the locker room and getting them to stop with the childish games. That, to me, is an anatomy of a collapse.
I agree with you.
And that is,
yep.
Okay, this is a rebuild. And if you're not going to say this is not a rebuild, then you know what? Then Cimini needs to go home.
I will agree with you in this regard. The anatomy of collapse, or the dawning of collapse, if you will, was week 3 last year in Kansas City when everything started to fall apart.
You're damn right it was.
Okay, that's when the locker room started to fray apart. That's when the guys were starting to go after each other. And the
Right.
Jets, who if I remember vaguely, I think were only down 10-7 at the half.
Exactly.
And then it just blew
Yep.
up in their face.
Yes.
So, because remember the first two, because they could have won week 1 against Cincinnati but missed the field goal. And
Yes.
week 2, they beat up on the Bills.
An extra point. I think
Right.
they missed an extra point first and then the field goal.
Right. But the point is, that's when it really started to collapse, and that led to the disaster that was last season. This is a rebuilding year, but what I thought about Samini's article, I actually kind of liked it because it actually kind of summarized a lot of things we've talked about. You know, kind of this decay of the team over the last 6-7 years, where they've kind of led to this point of needing to rebuild. So that's what I got out of that article. I understand where you're coming from, but that's just me.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Look, you can interpret it your way, I interpret it my way, but look, we all both agree this whole thing got started week 3, or if it did get started the opening game of the regular season because of a missed opportunity to being the Bengals after you sacked Dalton 7 times. I mean, how do you sack Dalton 7 times and you don't win the game? I mean, that was really a tough one to swallow. But it's even tougher when you go to Kansas City. And look, I understand Arrowhead is a tough place to play for visiting teams. We all know how rabid that fan base is in the Midwest. We all know what they, how they support their NFL team. You know, we all understand this. We all understand what's going on over there. But the Jets had an opportunity, and they lost it themselves because of, after pulling back a touchdown before the half ended.
Mm-hmm.
Fitzpatrick throws 4 to 6 interceptions in the end zone that were, horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
And, then it started blowing up on the sidelines in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of handling it and fixing it, it got festered, and then it just blew up.
Yeah. Like that.
Exactly. And, I mean, they started to play well, trying to get back onto the, trying to get back to the positive side of the standings. You all thought, okay, fine, maybe it's fixed. And then that game in Miami just was absolutely a disaster. That was horrible at the end.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
When is it not down there? It
really was. It really was. But the truth is that this Jets team right now, there are too many holes on offense that you can basically pick and choose what could be, what's the big issue? We all know what the big issue is.
It's the quarterback.
It's almost every position on the offensive side of the ball for the Jets.
It really is.
Quarterback is an issue. Running back, there's an issue. There's a bigger issue now on wide receiver than we thought there would be. At least we thought, okay, fine. You get rid of Decker, but you still have a Nunwa, and then all of a sudden the bulging disc in the neck knocked him out for the whole year. So now you have a larger hole in wide receiver than you do in running back. At least you can trust Powell. You can trust Forte. Backups are big question marks. Offensive line is a huge question mark.
Absolutely.
But you can definitely say on defense, front 7 is not a problem. There is a question of the secondary up to a point where you know what you got in Jamal Adams. You know what you got in Marcus May, and they've both done so far very well at the safety positions. But corners is also a big question. As much as I thought, Dexter McDougal, when he was drafted out of Maryland a couple of years ago, it sounded to me like he might be the answer, and he couldn't play anything because he got hurt and he was out for the season. Now he's got an opportunity to show what he can do at quarterback.
Absolutely.
Has he done okay? Some plays he's done okay. Some plays he has not done okay. So there's still a big question mark on Dexter McDougal right now. As much as I liked what I thought I saw originally. Darren Lee, I thought he's improved. Could be a little bit better. We'll have to wait and see. But still, though, more questions on offense for the Jets than there are on defense.
You hit everything right there. The Feuerstein's Fire Show right there, folks. I mean, you really hit everything right there, Dan. I can't find anything I disagree with. The cornerback situation, I think, is very tenuous. Maurice Claiborne, a guy who always gets hurt. I mean, he was never really consistent in Dallas. They bring him in because they needed to have that veteran corner, but he looks like a kind of guy that's going to get burned a lot. I mean, I don't know if he's going to be a guy that he's not going to be a shutdown guy at all. Buster Screen.
You need a roster spot.
Yeah, you needed a roster spot. Buster Screen. This is really make or break for Buster Screen. He was part of that big overhaul that McCagnon had a couple of years ago, bringing guys in, and he really hasn't turned out to be much of anything. He was more of a nickel guy last couple of years, And now's his time to really be that number one corner. If he doesn't do that, they're going to look to get another guy in the draft or in free agency next year. But
I agree.
Strong safety.
But you never know.
Yeah.
They might draft another cornerback anyway to see, if Screen could mentor him. Because here's the thing about Buster Screen.
With the first pick in the 2018 draft, the Jets select a cornerback. Woo!
Oh my God! But anyway, look, you're right. I mean, Screen is mostly known for third downs, nickel packages. Just being a third option in the secondary. To try and prevent, offenses from throwing down the middle and trying to knock those balls down, or at least being wide left or wide right. Screen right now is being asked to be an all-down guy, which he's probably relishing the opportunity. Mm-hmm. But he also has to understand, and it doesn't matter if you're in New York or if you're in Cleveland or you're in San Francisco or even in Alcatraz. Did I just say that?
Yes, you did.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. I apologize. Let me take that back.
Well, that's okay. That's okay.
How about Mobile, Alabama? We'll go college there. Let me just say this. It doesn't matter what level of the game you're at. If you're not going to be a shutdown corner, you're done.
Mm-hmm. I agree. You are done. And not only, it just makes that much of a difference for your defense when you have those shutdown guys in your secondary. That's why the Jets' defense was so good a few years ago when they had Revis and Cromartie in their prime, being two shutdown guys in that secondary. That's really where the Jets could get burned this year. I think safety is going to be fine. I like the front seven. We all know Wilkerson and Williams are going to get most of the headlines. Richardson, those guys get the headlines. But you know what? Guys that to watch out for, you brought up Darren Lee. He's a guy who kind of goes under the radar. Molden is another guy who goes under the radar. And Demario Davis, I know he comes back from Cleveland, wasn't really considered a top linebacker, kind of was brought in to replace David Harris, who I thought they handled badly in releasing him. And now he's got a chance to win a Super Bowl in New England this year. Don't be shocked if he does. But he's a serviceable linebacker. Really, like you said, front seven, not bad at all. Pretty good, in fact. And they're going to get after the quarterback. They're going to get their sacks. The question is going to be, offensively, can they score enough points to keep that defense off the field and have enough long sustained drives to keep that defense off the field? And can that secondary make some plays, especially down the sideline?
Yeah, exactly. Because I think that's the one thing the Jets are going to get burned on most of the time. It's going to be those throws down the sideline, down the middle. And, if Screen, McDougal can try to find a way to maybe get burned maybe only one time whenever they get thrown the ball, whenever the ball gets thrown towards their way, that's all you can really hope for. And all I can say is that, it's one of those things where you just have to try to hope that nothing happens, Nothing happens that's severe. Mm-hmm. But still, though, it's one of those things where this is a season where, it's going to be completely either unpredictable or predictable when you're gutting a team the way the Jets have. So all I can say is that for this Jets team, they're just going to have to go out there. They're going to have to grin and bear it when they're performing out there, and just try and do your best. That's all you can ask for them right now. Try to have solid performances. Mm-hmm. That's all you can do. Other than that, look, this is what it is. Mm-hmm. Just try to enjoy the games. I know no one wants to see them lose. I don't want to see them lose, but look, you're going to have to experience probably a losing season where there are no playoffs on the line. And I think that's the one refreshing thing about this season, Michael, is that playoffs are not on the line. No one's predicting playoffs. No one's talking about the playoffs. No one's saying we got to be the wild card. We got to get one of the two wild cards. We've got to find a way to pass the Patriots to win the division. No one's talking about that. They're talking about trying to win as many games as possible. And if you don't do it, that's fine, because there should be a brighter road.
There should be
down a brighter light down the road. That's what it should be.
And looking at the schedule right now, and I'll be honest with you, I see this team winning anywhere between 3 to 4 games, and maybe that's being too positive. I don't know, but I think 3 to 4 games sounds just about reasonable. Whether that gets them the number one pick, Probably not, but it could happen. I mean, maybe they will, maybe it won't. I expect Cleveland and Jacksonville to be a little bit better than they were last year, although Jacksonville may start tanking because their quarterback situation is just as bad as the Jets is right now. We'll see what happens, but I'm going to say right now I'd say 3 wins just on the outset, and we'll go from there. Whether that leads to them getting one of these considered top quarterbacks in the draft next year, we'll have to wait and see. And I don't even know how good those guys are going to be. Those guys, for example, Sam Darnold, is only entering his second year. He only has 9 starts under his belt at USC. We got to learn a little bit more about him in a full season of college football for 13 weeks. And also take a look at what the kid from UCLA, Rosen, and the kid from Wyoming, I really like. That kid has a big arm. He's a big kid. So we'll see. One of those guys could end up being the Jet quarterback next year. Then again, knowing the Jets, they'll probably take a defensive lineman in the first pick of the draft.
We can't worry about that right now, Michael. We can't worry about who they're going to draft. I know you like to check out the future. I know you like to see what they're going to do and how they're going to screw it up, but that's okay, Michael. Right now, you can't worry about that. Right now, you have to worry about who's going to improve on this roster. You need to know who's going to improve, how they're going to improve, and when and why, how, where, what, how they'll improve. Because this is the first year where we just don't know what we're going to get here. And look, if this is a failure of a rebuild, if this is a failure of a situation where, that no one's improved, then look, Woody Johnson has every right to contact his brother from England and say, fire them all, cut them loose. They haven't done the job. I don't like what I see, but it can't be just after one season, because if it's after one season, then what's the point of going into a rebuild when you're not giving a fair chance here? Look, if it's not at least 2 to 3 years, then Woody Johnson is the worst owner in the National Football League.
If he's not there already. Dan Feuerstein of Feuerstein's Fire and also of fanfavorites.com. Dan, give us the hashtag that people can follow you on the Twitter.
My Twitter handle is at capital letter D, capital letter F as in Frank, all lowercase EUER, S as in Sam, TEIN. Go to blogtalkradio.com /Jets-fans favorite. And of course, if your listeners want a little bit of American soccer, go to onceametro.com of SB Nation. Also, blogtalkradio.com /Feuerstein's Fire, no apostrophe S.
Are you saying that there's a cult following, a major cult following for soccer?
Well, I have over 151,000 listens.
Oh my God!
I know.
That's pretty good.
It is very good. After 8 years of broadcasting this show, live streaming show on Blog Talk Radio, I've finally reached over 150,000 listens.
You can't be stopped, folks. You can try many times to put out the fire, but you can't do it, especially when it comes to soccer, who is the king of that. Dan, this was a lot of fun, man. I really want to thank you for coming on board, talking some Jets football. Obviously, we'll suffer through this throughout the course of the season, and we'll probably
It's fine. I can take it. I'll get the popcorn. I'll get the soda. I'll get the chips. I'll get some sausage, peppers, onions. I'll do it, man. It's all right.
I can just see now Buffalo Wild Wings, Thursday night football against the Buffalo Bills. Jets losing a field goal, and you're like, yeah, we lost. Yeah, we did it.
No.
I'm kidding.
Okay,
I'm kidding.
I know you are.
All right, Dan, I'll talk to you a little later. Hold on.
All right, talk to you later. Bye.
All right, people, that is the Fire, Dan Feuerstein. Again, I want to thank Dan for coming on and joining us here tonight. Folks, remember to follow us on the social media, facebook.com /openmicprogram, twitter.com /openmicnj. That's twitter.com /openmicnj or at openmicnj, same thing. And, of course, follow us here on the YouTube channel, The Sports Talk Nation. Folks, I want to thank you for joining us, listening tonight. We'll talk to you next time. We got some big teams coming up. We got the Patriots. We got the Cowboys. We got the Giants. Maybe the Raiders as well. So we got some teams we still got to touch on here for a training camp tour. Take care, everybody. Talk to you next time.